is something as crazy and as random as chaos, can it be predictable?
I can only tell you what I've found out from the research I've done so far. If you look specifically at the stock market, that I think the stock market shows really good evidence that chaos is unpredictable. That I mean, if you look at it, if you look at managers, investment managers, they almost always perform. I mean, you know this before perform behind the average of the stock market itself, and so um, one of the things about chaos is that almost by definition it's unpredictable. Now, there's some things you can tell when there are changes in administration in a particular country, particularly the United States, where it's every 4 years, like a drumbeat. Then yes, you can probably predict that there will be some elements of chaos. You can see trends, and trends can lead to chaos, especially if they're chaotic trends. So you see the breakdown in trust in both our countries, in the three major sources, traditional sources of information. And this is a chaos, a growing kind of chaos. So we can predict that it's going to get worse. If you look at people's faith in science, it's really been breaking down over the past 20 years. You look at faith in journalism, traditional journalism, it's almost entirely gone. And if you look in faith of our chief source of data, yeah, and that's government, faith in government has broken down as well. This this means that as long as that faith isn't there, that trust, when you get that lack of trust in information, that creates chaos, which can also create all kinds of opportunities for people who want to make a lot of money or just ruin the world.
And let me ask you the same question in a different way. If we have enough of something, does something that might seem chaotic what I'm asking is, with the right perspective, can chaos seem less chaotic? For example, if you look at atoms in a reaction, the bumping of atoms bouncing around and the enthalpy of the reaction that needs to be reached before things react, and new compounds to be made. If you looked at individual compounds bouncing around, it's incredibly chaotic. It's almost unpredictable. But then if you scale out and I mix orange juice with some water, it's very predictable the way that they're going to mix. So is chaos and this might be a mindset thing as opposed to something practically we can do to increase our sales, but can some of this, if we pull back far enough, can some of this become predictable from that perspective?
You just said it was something really critical here. First of all, I'm going to have to interview some chemists for this book.
Well, I will. I'll give you this not anecdote, but I don't know how much you know about electrons around within a molecule. So when we draw them on a screen, you'd see the protons, neutrons in the center, and you'd see electrons, kind of a blob floating around the outside. Well, that's not how they exist. So you may know this. So don't feel like I'm trying to be condescending here. But for the audience, what really happens is there's a cloud of probability that the electron may be there, might not be there. And it's only when we observe the electron that we see where it is in time. Now, some of the probability, there's a high probability that's within this cloud. There's some probability that the electron isn't within this cloud, and we've no idea. There's only theory as to where this electron goes. So this might be something interesting for you to look at from a chemistry perspective or a physics perspective. When you get this small and this nuanced, it's completely chaotic, again, until we observe it. But then when we scale all the way out, I know a mug is there because I can hold it. And this is clearly made of electrons, protons, and neutrons.
What the critical thing that you're talking about here, it seems to me, is that you're making a brilliant analogy of perspective. And perspective from a rhetorical standpoint, remember I said everything goes back to rhetoric, has to do with framing. And framing, when you think about what a brilliant word framing is, framing has to do with setting a frame behind a particular issue where you focus on some aspect of an issue and you deliberately ignore another aspect. And you can do that in your analogy by getting closer, backing away. This is where it's really important in determining your own personal situation, if it's a sales situation or a business opportunity or whatever, to understand what's relevant and what's not. So if you say it in terms of electrons, In terms of our daily life, electrons are only relevant if we're an electrical engineer or someone simply interested in electrons. In terms of your coffee mug, that's irrelevant information. Good to know, but irrelevant for your ability to drink coffee. Now, same thing applies for any kind of economic chaos or political chaos or chaos within your own life, for that matter. The question is how you're going to frame it. And the important thing about framing is not only what you include, people tend to focus on that alone, but what you exclude as well. I mean, we couldn't have MP3s, we couldn't have music on our iPhones if a bunch of brilliant people hadn't decided what was irrelevant in the data that you're going to hear with music.